Hi, welcome to your Monday Mindset Moment. We're here on Zoom and Facebook, and also the replay will be available on YouTube. And we just want to make sure that we're taking really good care of you today around
Facebook, and also
mood
the replay will be
management.
available on.
Today is another Monday Mindset Moment where we're going to be taking about 10 to 15 minutes to really look at a specific tool or strategy that will help you shift your mindset to help you feel more resilient and effective as a parent as you empower your happy and resilient children. And the theme has been, really starting with us with cultivating our calm. And so if that's appealing to you, like how you can manage your own emotions, work with your emotions, feel through them. And for most of us, just feel better at the end of the day about how we responded to some of the tougher moments. Maybe your child has big emotions and you notice that being a trigger for you. Maybe your child doesn't listen when you ask them to do things and you're having some difficulty with motivation and cooperation, and that's what's up for you. Whatever it may be, it can only help the situation if we feel more masterful around our own emotions. Can we all agree? Yeah. And I can so relate to that feeling that you have that can come up after you've expressed your emotions in ways that you're not very proud of, that maybe tip the scale over into something a little more damaging to the relationship, or something that you might even feel bad about or guilty about, or sometimes confused and lost. Because sometimes we'll try something and it really doesn't work, and that's when we feel bad. Or sometimes we have an overreaction. I know myself, I have done things like I've threatened punishments that I couldn't follow through on. Oh yeah. I have definitely shut down and just sort of given in, even though I know it's reinforcing behavior that I don't actually want to encourage, like whining or throwing a tantrum to get what you want. I've also just been really anxious that I'm not doing what my child needs me to do to support them in that moment, to either learn something or to soothe themselves or to kind of get through something difficult. Lately, a topic that I've been speaking a lot on this last week is just how to help kids with current events. And when they're hearing about things like the school shooting in Texas and other, even just through the whole pandemic with the coronavirus, how do we support our kids with the fear, the anxiety, the anger that can come up, and the sadness? So the baseline though is for us to be able to manage our own mood. And so um, I want to invite you, if you have been thinking of this solely as how can I help my kid manage their mood, I want you to really include yourself in this. So my first tip is to get to know emotions from even a scientific perspective, like understanding the science behind emotions. And the very key perspective that I want you to walk away with is how much of it is voluntary versus involuntary when an emotion comes up. As you might guess, it's primarily involuntary when strong emotions come up, especially. And I really want you to be able to kind of learn about the hard wiring of an emotion so that when they arrive, it doesn't become something that you immediately start to take personally, or that you make wrong right away for being here. Because we have myths around it, whether or not it's okay to show your fear, to show your sadness, to express your anger and frustration. So if an emotion arrives, just notice within yourself, like your child's emotion or even your own strong emotion comes up. Do you make it wrong that it's here? Like, oh, I must have done something wrong to be so scared or so sad or so angry. Or oh, I must have done something wrong for my child to be melting down or tantruming, or like kind of hiding because they're scared. It's not necessarily that. It's actually a fine-tuned way that our nervous system responds to our environment to keep us safe and to inspire caregivers to take action on our behalf. And I know Jen is here, welcome, and Lucia and Sharon on Zoom, others on Facebook as well. Always love to just a quick hello with the age or ages of your children and your location. It's always a fun way for us to get to know each other. And if you have a specific question about mood management today, I can see what we can get to as well. But yeah, feel free to just listen in as well. Welcome. So glad you're here. All right. So the first tip is if we can get our heads around, and literally our heads, like this is the thinking process of being able to, actually think clearly in these moments where we're flooded, can be very challenging. Like how many of you just feel like your mind is elsewhere? Like you're kind of like you've lost it, right? In my world, we just say we flipped our lids. We flipped our lids. And if you can understand that this is something that happens. Hi, Devlin. Welcome. Glad to have you here with from Oregon with your two girls, 9 and 13. Yeah. So if you can understand, this is a hardwired natural response to the stimuli in the environment, and also to is based on their limited life experience, and also your own limited life experience. Like perhaps you haven't had your child just turned an age where they're starting to get curious about world events, and this is the first time you're having to sort of explain this phenomenon that we have, this tragic phenomenon we have of school shootings in the United States. That can bring up your own emotions because you have limited life experience in this. But what I want you to keep like tune into is just like having what I like to call a flash of awareness. Add in a flash of awareness of like, oh, sadness is here, or oh, fear is here, oh, anger is here, and do everything you can to avoid making that a wrong. Okay. And same with our kids' emotions. Oh, it's here. Okay, got it. Almost like you're just the awareness is more about observing and gathering information and making sense of that would be the next step. And the way to really get to the heart of this is I like to ask you to think about the last time you yourself were very upset and your mood was really off. You had this big emotion that came up. And I want you to really evoke this moment. Think of it. Maybe you were sad, maybe you're angry, maybe you're sad, or maybe you're scared, anxious, something. Okay. Got it? All right. Now, I want you to ask this question. Did I choose to feel that way? Was it a choice? Was it like, now I'm going to get really angry, and then you got angry? Was it a conscious choice coming from an intentional place? I'm going to venture to guess, unless you were like, I really need to get my ire up to get the courage to do something, or like I should be feeling more sad about this. I'm gonna let myself feel sad. Like that's a very unusual, and also can be a good practice. But typically, when we're in a funk, we have a bad mood or an off mood, and a big emotion arises. It wasn't a choice. Okay, how humanizing to just acknowledge that, right? Because we have this pressure on us that we're supposed to be like fully in control of our emotional state at all times, managing our stress, while we do the million jobs we have. And it's just not reasonable, and it's just not right. It's like not biologically possible to constantly choose your mood. As a matter of fact, we're more hardwired to sort of react to our environment, respond to our environment, react to our environment, and the mood comes. So the first thing I want you to really do is like harness the power of that awareness to release any kind of blame or shame or judgment around an emotion or a mood arriving. Because as soon as you go into blame and shame and judgment, it's a downward spiral. How many of you have been there? How many of you have seen your kids get there, where they're so sad that they were so mad and they did this harmful thing? They're devastated. They might even say negative things about themselves. I'm such a bad kid, or I'm such a bad boy, or I'll never be able to handle it. Or, I've heard moms who yell at their kids a lot say like this very permanent thing, like, I just have a bad temper. There's nothing I can do about it. And I just think, wow, like there's so much judgment in that this is like a fixed quality. There must be something wrong with me, and it just is the way it is. Now, yes, there's temperament, but there's also a lot we can do to navigate and even mold our temperaments into something really useful and manageable. So how many of you been there? Just say me in the comments or chat, like me, like I've been there. I've been there where, I've lost my cool. It wasn't a choice. Something happened next. Yeah. Devlin says me, exclamation point. Yeah. So how about we infuse some space for some grace and compassion and some awareness that will slow things down? Because if we get ourselves into that blame, shame, judgment, or just just kind of being unconscious about the emotion being here, we're not allowing ourselves to kind of feel it and own it, and maybe give ourselves something we need. That is usually when things kind of escalate or go too far, and we end up feeling embarrassed or sad about what happened, or just concerned that we're not really showing our kids a good model of how to handle emotions. So good. Yeah. Yes. Lucia says, yeah. And I'm guessing Jen, Sharon, probably had a moment, at least one, where you're like, wow, I'm really not, this is not a choice. I wasn't in control. It just happened. So we're bringing in that awareness, we're bringing in that compassion. Number one tip, if you do nothing else, and this is also what we build to in the 6-part series I have coming up, which just for being here and listening to this recording, I'm going to give you a code that will allow you to register for free all the way through next Sunday, but it does start on Friday. But this is kind of a hush hush, you know, just because you're here. So I'm not even going to say it out loud. It's going to be in, yes, did I spell it correctly? Okay, it's going to be in the chat. All right. And then for folks who are not here live, I'll still give you the link, but you just will have to pay the highly discounted $17 to join us if you're not already registered. But in the 6-part series, we talk like day 6 is the power of the pause. And we're going to actually practice and help our nervous systems experience a pause and really understand like how we can just access that pause at any moment to bring in this awareness. And one of the ways, one of the roads in, just one tip for today is that idea of, did I choose this? And what do I want to choose instead? Yeah. So then instead of, you can be compassionate around your reaction. Don't say like, why did you choose this? You know, it's like, you didn't choose it. It just happens. It happens. We all do it. We all flip our lids. We all have bad reactions sometimes. I still remember being in a classroom full of kids, and I had this one child who, you know, didn't honor personal boundaries very well and kept getting up in my space. And one time she put her hand on my shoulder really hard, even though we had this agreement that she would just softly put her hand on my shoulder. And I lost it. I just was like, get your hand off my shoulder. You know, I just had this like animal response of like, you know, and immediately I was like, ooh, you know, but I knew, I was like, okay, that wasn't a choice. What do I, and I said, wait, hold on. Sorry, sweetie. What I meant to say was, I caught it. What I meant to say was, can you please put your hand on my shoulder more softly? I will absolutely get to you. Do you think you could do that? I said, and I'm sorry about my tone. I had a moment of frustration, and just able to turn it right around. And then, because when I went, she started to go, you know, she started to like yell, sing things like, but I need this, I do that. Oh, and that's what's, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Like I took it off course. I went like this. So of course you're going like this. We're mirroring each other. Like your mirror neurons are mirroring what you're seeing and feeling in me. And now you're escalating and I'm about to escalate, but instead I put my lid back on with this flash of awareness. Okay. So if you were to take the 6-part series, you know, go through the course, we'll build to that, and it'll really anchor it in on day 6. It's like the master or the mother skill. Okay. Tip number 2, that one's the big one. Everything sort of hinges on that. If you don't realize that it wasn't a choice, it was a reaction, and then if you don't bring in that awareness to make a different choice, it can be very difficult to actually move forward in your progress. And that's why, you know, moms like this client I had, her name's Rachel. She was yelling every single day, and her kid was yelling back, and they were getting, and there's these big tantrums and power struggles. And she's like, I was that mom, she said, her words, that mom yelling at her kids in the street and all the neighbors watching. She was hopeful but skeptical. She's like, how am I going to change this? So she came to a workshop similar to the series. She took one of the tools, she brought it home, and it worked. Like her kids started to use this lid flipping metaphor, and she started to use the roller coaster breath, because that's the one that she wanted to try with her daughter, and she happened to fit her. And next thing you know, they're taking these roller coaster breaths in the middle of what would have been a screaming match. And now she's that mom on the street, like teaching her kid coping tools and getting along and problem solving. And so she got to the place where she's like, finally I get to bake cookies and snuggle on the couch, and that's the most of what we're doing with our time. So even if, I'm just saying this because even if you feel like, no, Vanessa, like I do this, I get anxious and I shut down, or I give in too easily, or I get scared, or I get angry and then my temper just takes over and I yell, or maybe someone in your environment is doing that, like another caregiver. I just want you to know change is 100% possible. I mean, even if it's just one step at a time, it makes a difference. Like imagine 20% less heated conflicts with your child, or 20% less, you know, you shutting down and giving in when you really need to hold the line. And then you get to cutting it in half. And then eventually it's, you know, very rare. That's what Rachel went through. Oh, thanks, Lucia. Lucia says, that's amazing. It's a teachable, learnable skill that we try to make this big mystery out of. It's sort of like resign ourselves maybe even to, but it's absolutely something we can influence and continue to make different choices in the moment with this awareness piece. So yeah, maybe consider coming to the series to build up to that pause skill. Number 2, be willing to go first. Notice how as soon as I caught in my story, right? As soon as I caught that my lid was coming off, I was like, oh, whoosh, whoop, it's me. Like I need to go first. As the one with the more life experience, as the one who's really supposed to be the role model, as the one who has access to trainings like this, right? And to trainings like the series, like I need to just go ahead and own it that I'll go first. And this can be hard. I've had several of my clients take some time to really let go of that position of being right or being in control or having that power over, to being able to admit vulnerably, which is even feels like you're giving up your power, but it's actually a superpower. Um, vulnerably sharing like, oh no, whoops, like, oh, I'm so sorry about my tone. My lid started to come off. Let me put my lid back on. Okay, what I meant to say was, could you please put your hand on my shoulder more gently, and could you please be patient? I promise I'll get to you in just a moment. It's just such a different message than like basically what, stop doing that thing, you're doing it so wrong, right? Um, excuse me, with Rachel, it was a lot less struggle around trying to get her kid to calm down. She was really like grappling with it, giving her a lot to push back on. It's like, here's this thing. And like the child's like pushing. Instead, she's like, whoa, why don't we both like kind of side by side alongside each other, say like, I need to put my lid back on. How about if I work on this and do a roller coaster breath? You're welcome to join me. She's like, and you could just feel her daughter's nervous system kind of soften as she got curious about it and tried it with her. So just really consider being willing to go first, learning coping tools, sharing those coping tools with your kids, um, being in the process of discovering which ones work for you for different situations or just work for you in general in front of your children so they can see what that process looks like. So they can feel invited to collaborate, to be a collaborator in creating more calm and more enjoyment in your family life. Yeah. So we need to know the science behind the emotions to understand that it's involuntary often when lids are flipping, and we need to bring in the awareness to put lids back on and make a different choice. But we also need to be willing to go first. Okay. Now the third one, and I like this a lot, is that we, like any skill, we need to kind of embrace the fact that this is a learnable, teachable skill that takes practice. Like there's no way I would throw a kid onto a baseball field and put a bat in their hands and expect them to swing well at a ball. Yeah. You would break it down into steps. You would say, hey, like, how are you gripping the bat? Where are your feet positioned? How are you following through on your swing, for example? Where are you keeping your eyes, right? How do you let go of the bat safely? All these things. And we know this and we understand it because it's so tangible, right? It's like a physical thing. But when we're talking about navigating big emotions, which is an even more complicated skill and takes even more practice, for some reason, we have this expectation of ourselves and of children that they'll already know what to do. And frankly, it's not fair to us or to them, to anyone. And even harder for us as adults is oftentimes we've seen a lot of dysfunctional or maladaptive or even unhealthy coping tools modeled for us. Oh, you feel this way? Shut it down, go silent. Oh, you feel this way? Like you can only feel that way in private. You better take that over there. Oh, you feel this way? Well, you better come out on top and really dominate, right? All these kind of dysfunctional, at least in terms of building trusting relationships with loved ones. I mean, all of those options are on the table still for other circumstances. But when we want to create connection with our children, we need to kind of build our toolboxes of healthy coping tools that build relationships and be really open to being a learner too, right? So my third top tip is practice. Like and just like we would learn how to swing a baseball bat, we need some mentorship and we need some instruction or some like guidance around it, and maybe even some time set aside for it, right? And whether that's my series that's coming up or working with me in coaching or working in the immersion or coming to these Monday talks, or signing up for something that feels like a fit for you, specifically, I want you and your family to start thinking of just practicing these coping tools. So in the moment, it's like muscle memory. Like every time your kid goes up to bat at Little League, let's say, do you want them to be like, okay, how do I hold the bat again? Oh gosh. And like, how do I do my feet? And oh, how am I going to swing? Like having to put all this effort into finding it while they're like nervous and the pressure of the game. No, We want them to be able to walk up and have it in their muscle memory. They're like, I got this, right? Smooth. So we can do that. We can have muscle memory about building in that flash of awareness with the pause. That's a very high level skill, but so important we highlighted today. But we can also have muscle memory of like, do a 4 square breath, like it's just there, it's in your hand, or the roller coaster breath, or like the tense and release tool, or like bringing in some humor, or whatever it is that ends up being your coping tool from our big menu that we're going to go through in our training, for example. But practicing it outside of the upset moment so that it just is accessible, like through your muscle memory, through your sort of nervous system training that you're giving yourself. And there's a second benefit, which is like practicing these kinds of coping tools actually brings your baseline of stress and sort of distress down. They say like 5 minutes of meditation can lower your stress by 20% for the day, just by starting the day with a different baseline for your nervous system. Then, oh crap, I got to get stuff done, right? It's like, and instead you bring it down for 5 minutes, you're actually smoothing out your nervous system. So bringing in these coping tools is actually one of the most effective ways to create more self-care. And it can look a lot of different ways. It can be getting exercise, it can be breathing, it can be meditating, it can be moving your body into some music. Like there's all these ways, but bringing it into daily practice, and more importantly, really encouraging your kids to do the same. So doing things like building it into your routines, doing it like associated with something else. And I have a whole masterclass, by the way, how to take these tools that you learn in the 6th day. On the 7th day, we're going to get back together for a masterclass talking about, and it's free included, called 3 Keys to Lasting Calm. Like, how do we actually build this into, our daily practice so that it's something that we don't even have to like plan for, and like, oh, this extra thing we're doing, like sounds like another thing on your to-do list. It's just something that happens right in your daily life. And I have some really important motivation hacks too, about a week, like 10 days later, saying like, well, how is it going? Are you actually practicing your tools, and why or why not? And let's like hack away at what could be getting in the way of you being motivated to move forward. The thing that's really exciting about all this is that like it's the same kind of practices. These are the same kind of practices of motivation and making something last that you really want to learn, that you can do for all parts of parenting. Whether it's making sure that you are using more positive discipline instead of negative consequences, or if it's starting family meetings and having that be something consistent that you really solve problems together, or if it's having your huddle with your co-parent to get clear on what the limits are, so you have a kind of in tandem coordinated approach to reinforcing the limits when kids are out of line and they need the boundaries, they need the help. There's all of these, it's like a template for success. So that's why I get so excited about sharing the series and the 2 master classes. I do it twice a year for the public. It's my most robust training that's available for the public, and my clients come too. So Sharon, I know, is a client. Anyone else here who is a client, I do encourage you to come or watch the recordings that are in your library as your bonus for being a part of my world. But otherwise, I would love to see all of you starting on Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, or watch the daily replay at your own timing of the day. And you can also play for some really valuable prizes. So I'll hope to see you there. Thank you for joining me for this Monday Mindset Moment. And if you would, before you leave, this is like a nice little practice we have, drop one thing into the chat or the comments, or on YouTube. We'd love to see the comments as well. One thing that you took away from this, whether it's one of the 3 tips, like Lucia did a nice job of adding the 3, bring in awareness because you know the science behind emotions and how powerful awareness can be willing to go first, or, and then the third one is practicing your tools. Maybe that's what stood out to you. Maybe it's Rachel's story. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the tone of voice I used in my example. Let us know what it is. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments so we can all learn together and kind of capture the gems. And if you have a follow-up question, if you're like, what about this? What about that? What about this scenario? What about this scenario? And I'll have a chance to, comment with you. I'll bring it over to the Facebook group and chat there to answer questions as well. All right, well, thank you for being such a great part of what makes Raising Our Resilience a robust community. We need diverse voices. We need different perspectives. So glad that you were able to come to this talk. And I hope that with these 3 mood management tips, you're actually going to be able to be proactive and get ahead. And when we talk on Friday for the series is really what to do, outside of, but also inside of those moments where your mood is off. You can shift your mood within 5 minutes. It's really some spectacular stuff. So we'll see you there. I know Lucia's going to be there. Sharon says practice, practice, and practice. So it's muscle memory for me and my family. I love it, Sharon. I think I really want to claim that as a goal in our work together. I think that's one you could even work on before the immersion starts in July. Yeah, because these are the like low-hanging fruit, part of why I like all my clients to take this first before we dive into the immersion. Lucia says, thank you so much for this, Vanessa. I still practice coping tools in my teachings on Sundays. Beautiful. Yeah. And it's not just good for kids, right? It's not just good for family life. It's good for team building. It's good for workplaces. It's good for, other kinds of relationships you have. I had a conflict with adults not too long ago that was kind of devastating in the moment because everyone flipped their lids and the awareness didn't flash. And we were all too tired and stressed out to bring that in. So I did something. I was like, I need to go put my lid back on. I realized though, finally, and I went and did that. And I came back to these adults in my life and I was willing to go first. I named what I brought to the table. I took ownership of it. I apologized for it. And then never had I ever gotten an apology text message from this individual, but I got one later that day saying, I'm so sorry. I think we were tired and stressed too. Let's see if we can start this conversation over. And what you were saying was actually reasonable. Like we just were able to get into this constructive space and repair. Where in the past with these particular, folks in my life, like before all these tools were in the system, the family system, particularly my system, I don't know that we would have spoken to each other for a while. We've just been conflict avoidant, right? And just saying and having all these stories about each other that like, I'm the victim. No, I'm the victim, and we got away from that within a 24-hour period. We finished that cycle. We completed the repair cycle and we're back on track. It was really quite tremendous for that particular relationship in my life, those relationships. So this is life skills. These are life skills we're teaching. We're not just doing cute kid things. Okay. So really consider embracing this piece and just keep coming back for more insights so that you can continue to build your own practices around this. And I'm so excited for each and every one of you who are in the work with me together because I know it's on the other side. By the way, Rachel got to a place where she's like, I am snuggling with my kid. I only yell like once a week at the most. Well, she said, I don't yell. She goes, well, sometimes I yell, but I catch it. And she has this lid metaphor. She has the coping tools. Her kids use the coping tools. She's been sending me these pictures of her child having this beautiful behavior at school where she's getting awards for being the best helper and things like that. And it's just been so rewarding. And then she had a family crisis, like a really serious health issue came up with one of her family members. And she called me, we talked, and she said, I don't know how I would have gotten through this if I hadn't learned what I learned in our work together. And if I hadn't filled my toolbox with these coping tools and ways to navigate big emotions, like, I don't know where I'd be. Yeah. So this is literally like the recipe for resilience. And I'm so proud of each and every one of you. And we'll be back next Monday. We'll be in our series. So it'll just be a little bit of a recap of the series so far. But really the best thing to do for this next coming week is to come starting on Friday at 1 and at 10 a.m. And we'll see you there. All right, lots of love to everybody. And registration's open until Sunday. So if you have friends that you wanted to learn alongside, we would love for you to help spread the word and just also consider how generous that is, right? To say, look, I'm learning tools. Will you learn them with me? And I heard you saying this was hard and that was hard. It's hard for me too. How about we learn this together? So think of family members, friends who have kids, maybe even, folks that, you're in touch with, like groups like PTAs, things like that. Feel free to share the link. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you all soon. Lots of love. And until then, be resilient and we'll see you on the other side. Okay. Bye for now.